All right, so today we are back to the book, Jesus in the Home, giving a continuation today with lessons 45, 46, and 47. So, Ryder, you're good to read?
Yes, yes,
And the screen is good for you?
yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So we begin 45, the need for action. The disciples were heatedly discussing the need of preparation for the divine kingdom. Philip discreetly emphasized the need for meditation. James the elder suggested spiritual retreat. The disciples of the renewing movement thought that they should isolate themselves in a place inaccessible to sin. John opted for ceaseless worship, going so far as to suggest that everyone should abandon their professional activities so that they could chant endless harsanas to the most beloved Father. Bartholomew pointed out the need for incessant fasting and refraining from any contact with unclean people. Called upon by Simon to please say something, Jesus asked Peter, "What kind of water causes pestilential miasmas?" Well, of course, the apostle responded intrigued. "Useless, stagnant water." Smiling, he asked the son of Alphaeus, "James, what kind of fish flows motionless on the waves?" "A dead fish, Lord," replied the disciple, disappointed. Bartholomew, what kind of land is filled with briars that prevent the sowing of a crop? The disciple thought and then answered, "Indisputably, it is good soil that has been neglected, because dry, rocky soil is nearly always unproductive." The master showed that he was sincerely satisfied and returned his attention to Diodis. What kind of tunic becomes a nest of destructive moths? One that is never worn. Nodding toward Judas, he asked, "What happens to the buried talent?" "It is wasted because it is useless, Lord." Next, he looked at one of the sons of Zebedee and said more incisively, "James, where do serpents and wolves seek shelter? In ruins or other places that have been abandoned?" "Andrew," Christ said, gazing at Peter's brother, "what is the purpose of yeast?" "Master, the mission of yeast is to give life to the loaf." Then, resting his piercing yet gentle gaze on his disciples, he added good-naturedly, "The temple is full of worshippers, yet Jerusalem is surrounded by misery. If the light is not used to drive out the darkness, if bread is kept from the starving, and if medicine is withheld from the sick, where can we find benefit in the work we propose to do? The divine kingdom holds the need for action as a fundamental order. Let us continue onwards, and let us spread the redemptive truth through our thoughts, words, deeds, and lives. The all-wise one created the seed to produce without end. The light of the sun comes down each and every day to drive darkness from the earth. The ministry of the good news is nothing more than that. To love by serving is to worship the Father above all things, and to serve by loving is to help our neighbor as ourselves. To abide by these guidelines as we progress towards redemption is to practice the whole law.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the very first sentence, as I said, generally gives the idea of what is the topic of discussion. And in this one, the topic of discussion is the need of preparation for the divine kingdom. And going ahead with towards the conclusion already, the answer from Jesus is action. So the need for action is the title. One thing that somebody may ask is divine kingdom. What is divine kingdom? Or where is the divine kingdom? For us spiritists, we could say that the divine kingdom is a world of the happy spirits, as it's called in the book Heaven and Hell, right? Where spirits more morally evolved resides, a world free from evil. For us spiritists, you could understand that being the divine kingdom. And the disciples and all the people there in the house of Peter that day listening to Jesus all had an idea and a possibility of how to get there, how to reach this divine kingdom. And many suggestions were given. Meditation, let us enter in the spirit, put ourselves in a state of meditation. Let's isolate ourselves. Let's go into a spiritual retreat and isolate ourselves from society so we can avoid being contaminated by sin. Another suggestion would be unstoppable worship, as John suggests, ceaseless worship, to the point that we should even forget about our jobs, our profession, and just place ourselves in perpetual state of praying and chanting the hosannas to the most beloved Father, and that would be an option to reach that state of the divine kingdom. Another possibility offered was fasting and to distance ourselves from sinners. And with so many options, and here I would ask, where did the disciples learn that from? Who provide them such as possibilities? Right? And we see later that definitely not from Jesus. Because when they asked Jesus what would be his best approach to prepare ourselves to reach the divine kingdom, he placed some questions to the disciples. Right? What kind of water could cause sickness? And the answer, correct, stagnant water. Water that's not moving. Water that allows the growth of microorganisms and stays there and multiply. Running water does not allow that to happen. So if you are lost in the woods and you need to drink water, make sure that you choose a place where the water is continuously running and you're likely to be safe. What kind of fish floats motionless in the water? Naturally, a fish is already dead. And that fish is a dangerous thing to be consumed. If you find a dead fish in the water, try not to consume that one. You have to get a fish that is alive, and then you'll be better to be consumed. What kind of land allow briars to grow? And briars, for those who don't know, I did not know, I have to check it, is that kind of thorny, invasive weed that grows in unprotected land, and it spreads very quickly and is very hard to be taken care of because it's very thorny to be removed. But it's very interesting, you have to point out here, that the briars will grow in a good soil. We go where there is enough nutrients for it to thrive. Because if it's a dry rock soil, it's nearly always unproductive. So this is very significant, that we are good soil. for the seed. And we're going to see the next chapter is about the seed, and the next chapter is basically a continuation or reinforcement of this lesson here now. So we are good soil, but we need to take care of ourselves, to take care of the soil that we have. We have to make sure that we not allow the weeds, the pests to grow on it, because when they grow, they become thorny and become hard to be removed, reproduce very fastly. And all the questions from Jesus leads to one answer, that action is required. Water that does not move becomes stagnant, becomes a breed for illnesses. Yeast gives life to loaf. Yeast is a living thing. This is something that is alive and it's multiplying very fast. You put that thing full of life in flour, and you give life to the loaf. So that's also a very significant message over here. And then he brings some comparisons. Okay, you suggest meditation, you suggest praying constantly, you suggest avoidance of the sinners, but the temple is full of worships. The temple is full of people doing exactly that, the meditations, the prayers, the singing of hosannas, the study of the textures and everything. And yet Jerusalem is surrounded by misery. So in these statements, Jesus says that all that's not enough. Not saying that it's bad, that it should not be practiced, but that does not bring the kingdom of the divine kingdom to us. Because the divine kingdom holds the need for action as a fundamental order. Emmanuel, when asked what's life, he said, well, life is something very difficult to define, and we cannot really define life. We can define what is a living being, can define many things, but what is life? What is life in itself? And Emmanuel says that life is, the best way to interpret life is motion, is movement. But then we'd say that motion movement are not in any no directions. It's a movement towards the perfection that awaits us. It's an action, it's a movement towards the liberation of our vices and the transformation them into virtues. And that needs to be put in order to us to make this transformation. And here is the thing, the transformation of where we live now into the kingdom of heaven, the divine kingdom. It's not a way to that we're going to be taken from here and be brought to a world of goodness where evil does not exist, where everybody is happy and doing good things. We need to start the work here to deserve to enter those kind of words. Or better yet, we have to do the work here to transform here in the place where you want to be. Not wait to be transported to that place, but to transform this place as the word, the kingdom, the divine kingdom. And what is this movement? What is this action that is required for us? Is to love by servants, to worship the fathers in all things. And to serve, the most important word, to serve by loving, is to help our neighbor as ourselves. To abide by these guidelines as we progress towards redemption is to practice the whole law. So, to practice the whole law, Jesus telling us here is that all that you guys are suggesting over there carry its value. We all need a time to place ourselves in isolation. The wonderful book, The Need for the Desert, in which sometimes we need to take some time for ourselves to be naked in front of of God in the desert, to recharge ourselves with good values and return to society to put ourselves to service. That it is by serving the others that we will build this divine kingdom on earth. And not sit here and place ourselves in a state of meditation, of prayers, or think and wait that, I don't know, an angel gonna come in by with an Uber and now drive us to this world of kingdom. You need to build it. You need to construct it for ourselves. And you go back to the question was, from whom did they learn this? Definitely the gospel of Jesus Christ suggests action, so much so that he came here to exemplify. He didn't write a book of guideline how to do it. He came and he did it. He acted on it himself to serve the example of how to transform this world, the world where we live in a divine world, in a divine kingdom. So it probably comes from other teachings that at one point was the most valuable lessons for us to have. We there could grasp yet the good news that Jesus brought to us. But with the arrival of Jesus, bring the truth, the way, and the life, he brings this absolutely new paradigm that the kingdom of heaven is something for us to build for ourselves. And regardless of what is going on around us, if we live following this proposal of Jesus, in the practice the whole law, which to love by serving or to serve by loving, we will live in a state of divine kingdom. The world may be in chaos around us as we experience it today right now. But if we individually seek to make this world a little bit better, doing a little bit more from ourselves to make things better for brothers and sisters around us, we will live in a state of divine kingdom. There will be no need to call an Uber to drive us there because we are living in that state. So again, the need for action, because life is motion, life is movement, but not a movement in any no directions, but a movement, an action toward the perfectibility of ourselves that allow us to be compliant with the law. And the whole law is to love by serving and to serve it by loving. Any questions there? Comment?
Yeah, you pointed a very you asked a very good question, right? Where did the disciples learn to give these answers, right? Because these things that it talks about, they were used later by the Christians, right, to create the temples, the monasteries, and everything. At that time, they were all Jewish, right? So all the answers would have to come from the temple, right? From their own temple that they used to go and learning in the temple to pray to look for the divine kingdom in the temple, right? Um, that's my guess here.
Yeah, I agree. And then Jesus transformed the streets, the houses of his friends, the places where they go out fishing, the squares where people are passing by, to transform all that in the temple, because that's where he showed, he exemplified what is to follow the law. There where he brought all his teachings, not inside of a confined place, but right there amongst the people, serving the people. So in his new paradigm, the temple is wherever you are at that moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because we never read anything about Jesus going to pray in any temple, right? We read stories about him going to the temple to argue or to talk with the Pharisees, with the authorities, but not to pray, right? He prays in public.
Public.
Yeah, which is, the example, right? You teach by example. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to open parenthesis here, none of us here say that don't go to the temple. We're not saying that at all. We're saying bring the temple everywhere that you go, but we all need to learn from someone else. If it is in the temple that we find that the good teachers who can teach and stimulate us towards the movement, the action towards perfecting ourselves, go to the temple, that's fine. But understand that to build the word of kingdom is not inside of the temple, it's in the communities amongst the people.
Yeah. You use the temple or whatever pray circle you want to give you strength, to give you a community, to work in community. That's always very helpful and useful, but that's not the end game, right?
Right. You go to engineering school, but you don't build bridges inside that school, right? You have to get out of there and go bridge, bridge build bridges wherever it's needed. It's definitely not inside the school, but there you learn how to do it. So you bring the expertise what you have gained where it's needed. Again, the next one here is the way I see is a reinforcement of number 45. It's a very interesting message as well.
Yeah. Okay, we'll begin. 46. The priceless tree. The Lord was pointing out the fact that the construction of the divine kingdom would be a work of fraternal union among everyone of goodwill. When all 70, who really loved Christ's moral allegories, asked him for some type of symbolic story through which all those present might understand better what he was talking about. Benevolent as always, Jesus smiled and recounted. There was a time when people lived in constant conflict along with misery, confusion, and suffering. So the merciful Father sent them a messenger, the bearer of sublime seeds from the tree of happiness and peace. The angel came down with the regal gift, and gathering all the people together for the festive delivery, it explained to them that the glorious plant would produce flowers of light and fruits of gold in the future, bringing an end to disagreement. But it would require special care in order to grow strong. While it was germinating, everyone's help was vital in the exceptional care of love and watchfulness. The seeds would need suitable soil, a perfect watering system, a certain type of fertilizer, constant protection against harmful insects, and various other measures during the difficult time of the beginning. The plant, however, was so precious in and of itself that all it would take was one victorious specimen, and blessed peace and happiness would overflow the community in general. Its branches would shelter everyone. Its fragrance would envelop the earth in tender harmony, and its fruit could be used to guarantee the well-being of the entire world. After the angel had entrusted the miraculous seeds to the people, all the onlookers went back to their homes, selfishly dreaming about possessing the tree with the flowers of light and the fruit of gold. They all planned to have the rarity exclusively for their own use. In order to do so, they eagerly isolated themselves on their lands and planted the seeds in hopes of personal and absolute ownership of the treasure solely out of heartfelt vanity. In order to live, the tree demanded complete fraternal cooperation, but the destructive conflicts continued. Due to their divine nature, the seeds did not go to waste. However, if some of the growers had water, they didn't have fertilizer, and the ones who had fertilizers didn't have enough water. The ones who had resources to defend against parasites didn't have access to suitable soil, and those who had the best land didn't have the means to watch over it. The owners of water and fertilizer, of land and defensive elements, as well as the rest of the candidates for possession of the heavenly wealth, began a full-blown war, mutually wiping each other out. The master made a long pause in the unusual story and added, "This is the symbol of the futile war of humans to the detriment of happiness. The Father's talents have been granted to his children indiscriminately so that they might learn to partake of his eternal gifts with understanding and harmony. Some have intelligence, others reflection, some guard the earth's goal, others sublime knowledge, some hold authority, others experience. But they are all out to win by themselves, not to disseminate the good with others through heroism in virtue, but to humiliate those who are bringing up the rear." And gazing at Zebedees significantly, he concluded, "When true unity becomes voluntary amongst all people on the redeeming path of sanctifying work for the natural good, then the kingdom of heaven will shine on the earth, like the divine tree with flowers of light and fruit of gold." The old Galilee smiled in satisfaction and did not ask any more questions.
Okay, thank you. So this lesson is, in my opinion, again, the reinforcement of the previous one. They go so close together, the complementary of one another. And again, the very first sentence usually tells us what is the topic of discussion. And the discussion over here is the construction of the divine kingdom. Would be a work of fraternal union amongst everyone of goodwill. If in the first lesson we could superficially imagine the divine kingdom as a place where we go from here now the word is different. It's the construction of the divine kingdom. So it's taken from the lesson of 45, in which how to get there. Now it's how to build it, how to transform whatever we are right now in the divine kingdom. So you see there is a big jump already, now following a evolutionary path. And at one point say, I want to work hard to go over there. And now I'm going to work hard to build it here. Now is the construction of the divine kingdom. This is extremely significant as well. And the old ZBD, of course, the one with some experience on his shoulders already, have understood the moral allegories of Jesus Christ was the perfect teaching method for us because it illustrates, because it brings palpable images of what the lesson is, of the what is really the teacher wants to bring to us. When you use allegories, when you use parables, you create that lesson so palpable that it sticks with you and have meaning. It become meaningful to you, to us, right? When Jesus invented the parable of the Good Samaritan, he created a story that was so palpable, that so commonplace, that one could not say, oh, it's something out of a different world. No, it's right there where people walk, where people go through, what things that happened in that environment at that time that could be used as a lesson. And of course, the old Zebedee have understood that and asked Jesus to bring one of his moral allegories, in other words, parables, right? To make them better understand, of course, us, and better understand how to get the construction of the divine kingdom. And in the sentence says that there would be true fraternal union amongst everyone of goodwill. So the recipe, the methodology of building this construction is fraternal union amongst everyone of goodwill. And Jesus came out with the parable of this priceless tree, a tree that that would bring light and happiness to everyone. And which everyone is that? These are people who lived in constant conflict among misery, confusion, and suffering. And would ask why they live in that situation, why it was so bad. And soon you're going to see why it was so bad. And to help them alleviate their suffering, their confusion, their misery, their conflict, send an angel to bring this magic tree, so to say, right? That these glorious plants would produce flowers of light and fruits of gold in the future. In the future, you need to be nurtured, that in the future they would produce all this. Bring it to end disagreement, but would require special care in order to grow strong. While it was ruminating, here again is the necessity. Everyone's help was vital in the exceptional care of love and watchfulness. So he already established the necessity of mutual cooperation to bring this wonderful tree to be able to produce the fruits that everyone wants. We all want that, right? The seed would need suitable soil. And we saw in the previous lesson, that we have suitable soil. Because if we're not suitable soil, nothing could grow in it. And divine providence would not waste resources placing seeds where it could not germinate. We are suitable soils, but you need to take care of that soil. You need to accept the contribution of those who have what's needed to complement what I already have in order to germinate and keep that seed strong and that tree to go strong. Right. So the soil is suitable, but it needs to be taken care of, not to allow the briars or that invasive thorn weed to take over the soil and don't allow the good seeds to germinate, to go over it. So the angel comes in, provides the recommendation. Here is the seeds. This is what you have to do. The seeds you need, again, the suitable soil, the good water system. You're going to protect it from pests, from insects. So you have to provide good sunlight, whatever it's needed. And then you're going to need the cooperation of everyone together to keep those seeds to develop. After the angel left the seeds to everyone, the angel left. And we see here why did they live in a state of conflict, in a state of suffering, in a state of poverty. And the reason is because they all plan to have the rarity exclusive for their own use. In order to do so, they eagerly isolated themselves on their lands and planted the seeds in hope of personal and absolute ownership of the treasure solely out of heartfelt vanity. So this demonstrates why they live in that state of poverty, of suffering, of disagreement, of conflict, because each one wants everything for themselves. And if I want everything for myself and someone else wants the same thing for themselves, there will be conflict. And the strong will step over the weaker, but the weaker will unite with the weaker, and they're gonna try to trump the stronger one, and there is no harmony, and there's suffering for everyone. The rich has to build a castle and build huge walls around that castle to prevent the weaker from coming in and take what belongs to them. And now the one doesn't have anything, continues to not have anything, and the one who has it all, but is a prisoner of their own castle. And no one lives in a state of happiness. Due to the divine nature, the seeds did not go to waste. Something that you always say, everything of a divine origin, and a prayer is of a divine nature, it does not go to waste. Even if the receiver is not really ready to germinate those seeds, if the receiver is not ready to use the energy of someone else's prayers, it has a divine nature. It's sacred in itself, and therefore it does not go to waste. It stays there, ready to germinate when the requirement arrives, and in this case, cooperation amongst all the community arrives, then the seeds could germinate. And as we are today, each one of us have different talents. Each one of us are good in some things and not so good in others. All of us have developed a talent, each one of in different areas, in different fields of education. And if you look at a community to be successful, all those talents have to be placed together to produce the wellness of the society, of the community. Some people excels in the biology area and becomes doctors, nurses, and veterinarians, everything else. So they go to the exact science. So they are very good in mathematics and physics. So they are good in engineering. They can build houses and bridge and hospitals where the doctors can work. And the doctors can receive those guys who are good in engineering, when they get sick, and mutually we build something that is good for everyone when each one puts their talents to the service of the community. But since that's not what happened, in this case, some have water, some had needed fertilizer, some had fertilizer by did not have enough water, and so forth and so on. The fact is that in every piece of land where there was the seed, they could germinate and produce. It was not able to germinate and produce because it was lacking something that someone else would have, but nothing was being shared among them. And unfortunately, this is the symbol of the futile war of humans in detriment of happiness. Is the state of unhappiness that we build for ourselves, the choice that we make. The Father's talents have been granted to his children again. The seeds given to everyone. And the soil is a good soil. Otherwise, the Father did not provide seeds where it could not grow, right? The Father's talent have been granted to his children indiscriminately so that they might learn to partake of these eternal gifts with understanding and harmony. But since we do not do it, the seed is not wasted. The seed is here, the seed is ready. The teaching is here, the gospel of Jesus is here, and it's perpetual here. Once we choose to apply it, then those seeds will germinate and produce the fruits that we all seek, that we all want. And when is that going to happen? When true unity becomes voluntary. Because there is no way that you can be forced to share. When it was made mandatory, did not work. If still words were, they tried with the so-called communism, it did not work well. When it would be forced to do things, it did not work well. It needs to be voluntary. And it only becomes voluntary through education. Educate each individual to understand lessons like this. Voluntary amongst all people on the redeeming path of sanctifying work of the natural good, when the kingdom of heaven will shine on earth like a divine tree with flowers of light and fruits of good. So again, to construct the divine kingdom, not anywhere else, but wherever we stand, and we stand on earth, to unite ourselves, to share our talent, the goodness that you have, to be open, receptive, with humility, to accept what our brothers has to give to us, to complement my weakness, to complement what I lack with the strength, with what the others have, and equally provide what I have, what's good, my strength, to others who lack it. And then we can build this kingdom of heaven for us. Comments, questions?
It's interesting that we're studying the law of progress, right? On Thursday, and we learned that the progress is constant, and it happens regardless of us trying to prevent or not, and it stays there, right? So it's so part of our journey, right? to work together. And it's the key there is voluntary. Sione wrote a comment there on the chat. I believe nowadays we are losing so much talent due to the loss of values. It is truly challenging to preserve these values within family, especially when raising teenagers. My husband and I work every day to instill and maintain these principles in our home. We are succeeding, but it is not easy to build and sustain the divine kingdom in today's world. Yes, definitely. It's hard because there are too many distractions. There are too many deviations from the true values. But again, we have to do our part with what we know and with what we think is the right approach, and understand and accept our differences, and above all, understand that we are eternal spirits, and progress will come regardless of those who try to prevent it, as we are studying on Thursdays.
Yes, and I think one of the difficulties that we face today is that, unfortunately, there is already some of those weeds, some of those invasive thorny weeds on the field already. So we need to do extra work. And it's our responsibility. We are responsible for that, right? And it's not blaming anyone else. We're blaming ourselves as a community. We didn't protect that land properly. We didn't take the proper care of that land, and you allowed some of those invasive thorny weeds to grow in it. So now we need to do this work of cleaning up that mess, and it makes our work more difficult. And we are facing the challenge now. And of course, as we said, parents, educators, I was having a discussion yesterday about education. I mean, that, yes, in my opinion, the school, the teachers, they have to go ahead and do the job that should be done by the parents, because the parents don't have it. I cannot give what I don't have. So there is this need of, again, the community try to clean up the mess, try to remove all that thorny weeds, that prevents the seeds to grow. And that's the way that we're going to allow, especially our kids, our teenagers right now, to not be influenced by those weeds, by those pests that are coming in, and making our word of educating our children a little bit easier, because it's never going to be easy dealing with teenagers anyway. But if we are able to remove some of those thorny weeds, some of those bad influencers, so to now the word of the moment now, out there, it becomes even more difficult. We are facing a double challenge these days. That is, of course, to the law of action and reaction. We are now sowing what we planted, at one point, not being careful enough with our field of land. Now you have to do a little extra work and clean up, remove all those weeds, all those briars, to allow the seeds to grow stronger. But again, the soil is good, and divine providence continues to provide. If we have to work a little bit harder, let be so. God educates through love, and he re-educates through pain. The choice is ours. We made some bad mistakes, made bad choices in the past, and now they worked a little bit harder. But it's still doable. There is one thing that I missed over here now that I'm talking that I think found very, very important also.
You're moving ahead. That's the previous one.
Well, sorry. I'm not gonna find it now. There is a word. There is an word of hope to us here. Say that the seeds doesn't go bad. If we make the work a little bit more difficult for us now, what you need to do is recognize that it's our responsibility to clean up the mess, to remove all the weed from the field. And it's easily doable because the seeds are there.
Mm.
And especially when we're thinking of our family, of the young ones, we'll stay here to continue the construction of this kingdom of heaven when we go back in the spiritual world, and eventually come back here and deal with the consequences of what we are doing now. Of course, to prepare the young ones to continue the path of the construction of this kingdom, to continue to make the cleanup that is necessary, is become even more challenging, but even more necessary these days, to really try to educate to the best that we can. We cannot force anything upon anyone else again. When true unity becomes voluntary, to develop in the young ones the goal to voluntarily share the good with others, to build this world that we live here. Today is more challenging, yes, I agree. It's our responsibility. We are, suffering the consequences of our bad choices in the past. But the seed is there, the seed is good, the seed is strong, and the soil is good. You just need to clean up the mess, and things will grow as we would like to. I see some chats over here. Okay.
Oh,
But that's what I just read. Any more comments? Okay, so go to the last one of the day.
Okay. 47, the disturbed educator. Andrew, the helpful apostle, was commenting on how hard it was to adjust to living according to the new truth when Jesus told the following story for everyone's edification. There was once a remarkable strong man who was a specialist in various types of services of reparation and readjustment. He was invited by an angel to help mend a crippled man who longed to enter heaven, and he accepted the job. He approached the infirm man with a hammer in hand, and despite the cries and tears that his work dewed out of the unfortunate man, he helped him to improve on a daily basis until he fulfilled his commitment. The divine messenger was pleased and asked him to help a lame elderly woman who eagerly wished to enter the heavenly court. Indifferent to the groans of the old woman, the stout worker imposed healing discipline on her and gradually got her in shape to ascend to the sublime realms. The jubilant minister of the Most High then asked for his help to restore a sore-covered and afflicted man who yearned for enigmatic beatitude. The repairman didn't hesitate. Completely deaf to the unfortunate man's complaints, he attentively and rigorously laced his sores, putting him in the position to ascend to heaven. When that job was done, the angel returned and asked for his cooperation on behalf of a young boy who was lost in bad habits. The restorer took the lad under his wing and gave him work and self-restraint with such a level of training that, in no time at all, the task was completed. And so the heavenly messenger asked him to help with various complex cases of physical and moral restructuring until one day the distinguished educator, weary of his imperfect life on the earth, begged the angelic minister for permission to go with him to heaven. The sublime ambassador examined him in detail and told him that he needed to prepare himself with the great event in mind. He pointed out his deformed feet, his deficient arms, and his defective eyes. This time he asked him to readjust himself in order to ascend to heaven. The disciplinarian began the task of self-betterment, hopeful and optimistic. However, his old hammer now wounded in his own flesh so roughly that instead of mending his feet, arms, and eyes, he fell to the floor nearly paralyzed and half blind, haphazardly and unsubmissively, writhing in pain, speaking blasphemies, and spewing insults at God and the world. He was unable to bear the saving treatment that he had applied to others, so much so that even his angel friend had an extremely hard time telling who he was because he looked so different. Having finished the lengthy test to which he had subjected the unfortunate man, the messenger of the Eternal One had no other recourse but to entrust him to other educators for the readjustment he needed by using the same salutary strictness with which he had treated others, so that the distinguished repairman could be perfect suitably enough to enter paradise. Noting the surprised looks on everyone's faces, the Lord concluded, "Let us use patience and love in all our tasks of correction, and let us learn to bear the measures with which we seek to improve the position of those around us. Because for every spirit, the time comes when it must be effectively and safely polished up for the divine light."
That's right.
You're welcome.
So we had two lessons of how to reach, how to build, to construct the divine kingdom, and in a more collective manner, like we all together doing our work to reach this happy world, or the world of happy spirits that we want for ourselves, that everyone wants. Even those who are today not cooperating in this task, they also want the place of happy spirits, the place of peace. But now in this lesson, it take an approach a little differently now. I put the individual. What is the individual responsibility of building that kingdom of heaven? And shows here that it's perhaps easier to educate others than to educate ourselves. That it's easy to apply the chisel, the harm, to adjust others, to allow those to express, to experience pain and suffering in order to readjust themselves to enter through the was the straight door, right? That Jesus suggests. No, you need to cut a little bit of the excesses that we have in order to pass that straight door. And that requires a lot of readjustment, reparation, readjustment, a lot of chiseling to chisel off all those excesses that we have. That is perhaps easier to do that upon someone else than do that upon ourselves. It takes this lesson, our approach of more the individual self's responsibility towards oneself. Now it's not only more towards the community, but towards oneself in this particular lesson now. And And of course, the topic of the last, of course, is how hard it is to adjust to live according to the new truth. The struggle that we have today to leave aside all the atavisms, all the old suggestions that one time was good for us, because that's all that we could handle, but not to accept this new paradigm that Jesus brings to live in accordance to this new truth, to this good news. And Jesus uses this another parable of this very strong man that was specialist in various types of service, of reparation, readjustment, and would exercise his expertise to the fullest, and was able to repair and readjust individuals to be able to pass through that straight door, was able to help people to lose all the excesses, to transform the vices into virtue so they could pass to that straight door. And then you ask this man for help in straightening some individuals. Approach the infirm individual and without any empathy was use his hammer, his chisel, and beat it away until those individuals were conformed to what was necessary to go to that straight door. And he did it. He did it to the man, he did to a woman who was lame, an elderly lame woman. He did to the young man who was lost in laziness and vices. And he helped everyone to make necessary correction in the cases of physical and moral reconstructing. He used both things. He did not kill the body, kill the body and the soul of the individuals through his method that was hard, that imposed a lot of pain and sacrifices upon others, but it worked. And then another symbolic message here is that we also want to enter that kingdom. We also want to pass to that straight door. And we see the excesses in others. We see that the need of the difficulties, others to go to certain difficulties in order to be able to pass that straight door. And very often we neglect to look at ourselves. We see the speckle at our neighbor's eyes, and we see the whole tree in our own eyes, right? And that seems to have been the case of this individual, that he worked so hard helping others, doing what he needed to impose difficulties, sacrifice pain upon others to fit to that straight door. But he never looked at himself. When he asked, no, I did a lot of work. Can I go now to that kingdom of heaven? The angel told him, well, you yourself need some reparation. You yourself need to remove some excesses. There is the problem with the feet, there is this problem with that, and of course these are all allegories, right? Because in reality we're talking here about moral values. And then say, go ahead and apply it to yourself. Everything is applied to all the other ones that I asked you, and you did with tremendous success as you help all of them. Now you help yourself. And then the problem begins. Because now he could not apply upon himself the same strength the same lack of compassion, the same lack of empathy towards others, towards himself, because now he felt in his own flesh the hammer, the chisel, the shaving of the excesses. It was extremely painful to him, and he was not able to do so. So the angel, and he's very important, had no other recourse but to entrust him to the educators for the adjustment he needed. If you go back to the lame elderly woman, to the young boy lost in vices, they all received the visit of this heartless educator because there was no other recourse. Again, it's very important. God educates through love and re-educates to pain. The choice is ours. And this man was so good at applying the necessary treatment to others, was not able to do it to himself and had no other recourse. He also received a visit of another educator for the adjustment he needed. Use the same salutary strictness in which he had treated others, so that a distinguished repairman could be perfected suitably enough to enter paradise, to go through the narrow door. I think the very important lesson for us spiritists who have a very good understanding of what is needed to do, of what the objectives are, we have good clarity of what is the path to walk in, to apply these lessons that, yeah, we are in a position of educators, like it or not, believe it or not, but we are in a position of educators. But how do we choose to educate? How are we going to make sure that we're going to educate in a way that we're going to lead those individuals toward the right path and not create rebelliousness, not create conflict with those that we seek to educate? And when we apply our methods upon others, let's apply it in ourselves first. See how does it feel? See how can we handle it ourselves? Let's put ourselves in other people's shoes first. Because if it's too much for us, perhaps I should slow down a little bit. No, no one is asking to be compliant with wrongdoing. No one is asking to not educate, not bring the right or the truth that we recognize being the right ones to individuals, but to not put too much light that might blind others. To not put more weight on people's shoulders than what they are able to carry. Leave that upon divine justice. They'll take care of it. So when we seek to educate, let us use patience and love in all our acts of correction. Yes, they use it like they need us sometimes to learn how to lose a little bit now to gain a lot in the future. That perhaps we take a little less than perhaps we could if we were more strict. But if you take a little bit less now, you'll be able to gain a lot more later. And that meaning bring individuals to the right path. If you don't push it too hard now, and don't get our loved ones, our teenagers, our no family to the path that we believe is the good one, and if you follow the path that Jesus brings to us and the spiritualism make it easy for us to understand, then you have a good amount of confidence that yes, that's the right path to follow. But to not impose it upon anyone else so strictly, because it may not be productive. Because we ourselves would not be able to handle what we are trying to force upon others. That weight they're trying to put on other brothers and loved ones' shoulders is a weight that not even we ourselves can carry. And again, it's easier to look at others than look at ourselves, right? And for every spirit, comes a times when it must be effectively and safely polished up to divine light. Regardless of where do we stand today, regardless of the ones that we think they are not on the right path, that are not contributing to the building of this kingdom of heaven, eventually every spirit must be effectively and safely polished for the divine light. Let us do our part with ourselves. Let's not make the correction that we make in ourselves. Let's apply the harm and the chisel upon ourselves to the best that we can handle. And help others with their own sublimation, but in accordance to what they can handle, not push it too hard. Otherwise, we create rebelliousness. We may deviate then even more. Because we cannot handle what we are trying to impose upon someone else, chances are that someone else will not be able to handle it as well. Yeah, the lesson is very important. When the student watching the shepherd on the field, the young learner used to go to the field with the shepherd, the old shepherd, and trying to learn how to shepherd the cattle on the field or the sheep on the field. They used to go to the field, work all day, and at night at a time of eating the supper together, the young man would have questions for the shepherd in order to learn. So one day the student asked the shepherd, "What do you do if one of your sheep fall in the hole?" He said, "I go there, I take the sheep out, I clean her up, I put her together with the others." And what happened? And when the sheep falls in that hole, it breaks one leg. Well, then I'll take her out, I'll clean her up. I need to bring her home, bring her here to my cabin. I'll heal her wound, and then I'll put her back with the others. And then he asked, "And what do you do if one of your sheep run far away from the others?" And the shepherd said, "Well, I cannot go after one sheep and abandon all the other ones. But that's not a problem, because I send my dog, and my dog will go over there and will rescue her, and then I'll bring her together with the others." And he finished saying, "My dog name is Pain." So there is a reason for the suffering, for the difficulties. And you don't want to apply that, send a dog, unless it's absolutely necessary. For everything else, we're going to use love first. We take them out of the hole, we're going to clean them up, place with the others, we're going to heal the wound. When it's healed, put them back with the others. But when the rebellion is get to a point in which I cannot abandon the other ships to go after one, no problem. We have our dog. Not we. The divine justice has its dog. And his dog's name is pain. Let us not be the ones who apply pain to anyone else. Divine law takes care of that. We take care of everyone. Healing, taking care of them, not being so strict. Using patience and love in all our acts of correction. And if needed, divine justice will send a dog when it's needed. Questions, comment? No? Okay, so we are done for the day. Hope it was useful.
Next Sunday, we are going to study the Medium's book. And we have the Spiritist Review is releasing the new edition today. Yeah, the Spiritist Review number 22 by International Spiritist Council. And the subject is divine or natural law. Duty. We started a new book on the book club, Arduous Ascension by the Spirit Victor Hugo, through the psychography of Divaldo Franco. That's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And the other regular studies continue on the regular days. That's it. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Elmo, for hosting for us today. A great gathering. Thank you, John, and thank you, Sarita, for reading for us today, and for everyone who is here participating. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the book, Jesus in the Home, being chapters 45, 46, and 47. The Need for Action, the Priceless Tree, and the Disturbed Educator. Action is needed to cultivate a good environment surrounding us and to reduce stagnation of our inner life in order to promote movement toward the divine kingdom. The message is to love and serve one another through action now towards liberation and our perfection. The divine kingdom is constructed with the actions of the fraternal community through their assistance of unity, vigilance, and cooperation. These are the seeds that germinate and will flourish at the right time. Serve with patience, love, and empathy, and let us do our part. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual world. We pray for our center SGNY and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.